You're listening to an AINC original podcast. We believe you don't have to do life without a compass. Let us be your guide on this amazing journey. Welcome to Navigating Life with Vision Loss.
Hello, this is Kim Wardlow. I am your host for Navigating Life with Vision Loss. So we are in a month of travel, which is so much fun. And last week, we talked to Sue Slater and talked about cruising and even being able to have guides waiting for you when you're on your cruise to help you on the ship and off the ship. So that was really interesting. If you didn't catch it, go back and listen to that. I think you'll find it helpful if you're looking to do some travel. Our feedback line information, we have a few more questions this week. So we're excited that you all are contacting us with your questions. Travel seems to be a hot topic. So if you have any other questions, we still have some weeks for questions about travel. You can call us at 720-712-8856. Again, 720-712-8856, or email us at feedback, FEEDBACK, at aftersight, AFTERSIGHT.org, feedback at aftersight.org. For the month of May, we are going to be revisiting mental health. We did cover some aspects of that topic last year, but we're going to look at some other aspects of mental health in areas like addiction, depression, loneliness, and drugs, both medicinal and homeopathic. So if you have questions around those topics, again, contact us either by phone or email. All right. So I'm ready to get to our guest this week. I am so excited because we are talking to my friend, somebody I've known for years, Maryann Migliorelli. And she's a bit of a travel queen. So we are talking to her today. Hi, Maryann.
Hi, Kim. It's great to talk to you.
Super. So, Maryann, you've been talking. We talk a lot too together, but you've been traveling for many years and have done lots of travel. I know you have done lots of cruises too. You're also one of our Aftersight Programming Advisory Team members, committee members. So we always appreciate the input you and also Paul give us on that committee. Do you want to just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and some of your travel experience before we get into some of the questions that we have today?
Absolutely. And for all of our listeners, thanks so much for spending this time. And I do hope that you find this half hour definitely quality. And I will give some contact information at the end if you want to get in touch as well. I am Maryann Migliorelli. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I now am a state worker working for the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. I work as an unemployment claims adjudicator. And that's what I do to keep the wolf from the door and be able to afford my fun travels. So I have my degree in business and hospitality management, and I have been for a long time somebody who loves to put together trips and assist people on getting from place to place and having fun at whatever it is that people want to do. I am not officially a travel agent, though I have taken some courses in it. But my main desire is to see people have fun in their lives. And I think that travel is an amazing place to do some of it. And I think that there are way too few blind people actually taking advantage of travel in the way that we can and should for a lot of reasons. But I have been on all the usual planes, trains, automobiles, the light rail, the buses, walking for miles, many cruise ships. I can't even. I think the only thing I haven't been on is a space shuttle, and I don't think that that's going to happen unless somebody is extremely generous to me. And then I will have friends who are super jealous because of it. And I have traveled with a cane extensively through all of these different ventures. And I have traveled with a guide dog doing all of these same things. So lots of different kinds of travel experiences. And for the most part, they've all been good. And even if they haven't been, they have become great customer service or stories that I can use in many different ways. And I have found ways to laugh at the things that have been the hardest in my travel. But life is good, and going places is one of the things I enjoy doing with it.
Well, thanks for introducing yourself a bit and letting our listeners know who you are. So today, Maryann, can we focus on airport travel? I know that can be really intimidating for individuals. It can be intimidating no matter what, but I know talking to folks that, especially if they've lost vision later in life, or they may have always been blind, but this is their first time dealing with the airport, that can be intimidating. Can you tell us about some of your airport experiences and maybe things you've come across? As you said, there's always positive and negative experiences.
Absolutely. And if you'd like, I can drop in some tips and tricks,
sure,
sort of for things about, well, in Colorado, primarily people are flying out of Denver, but there are smaller airports like Springs and Grand Junction and so on that are a little easier for some folks to navigate just because they're not as big. But the Denver airport, making plans to go to the Denver airport, there are a lot of different things you can do. If it's your first time or you're a little intimidated by the airport, there are some things you can do ahead. One of them is that if you are, when you're buying your flight, you absolutely can, and at any time after, ask for assistance to the gate. You can ask to be met at a flight check-in counter, or sometimes even curbside check-in, or even at and frankly, they will offer you, if you are walking by yourself and you are blind and you get all the way to security, they very well might say, hey, do you need a guide to the gate? And if that's the case, and you do feel like you want or need that guide, by all means, ask for it, set it up in advance. Airlines will absolutely arrange gate assistance. They will offer to either have somebody escort you to the gate, or they will, if you have somebody that you want to do that and they're with you at the airport, they will give you a gate pass, which is what it takes to have somebody of your choosing take you, escort you all the way through security and out to the gate. Doesn't mean that person is getting on your flight with you. It just means that could be somebody that you have chosen to bring you to the airport. That is one decent option for doing things like that. When I am traveling with my husband, not because of blindness, but because of his balance and walking disabilities, we get wheelchair assistance at the airport. That is also a very valid thing to do if you can't walk the distances. Denver is a huge airport. The concourses can be very, very long. So depending on where your gate is, you might be planning on walking a short little bit, or you might be walking half a mile or more just to get, possibly even longer, just to get out to your gate. So understanding what that might look like, if you are not able to walk that far confidently, or even without confidence, then absolutely ask for wheelchair assistance. Set that up in advance and make your life easier when you're traveling in the airport. On the other hand, if you're like me and you really want to get lots of steps in and you absolutely want to be able to navigate your own way around the airport, one thing to know is that give yourself extra time, especially if you're doing it in the very beginning, because you're not used to what it takes to go there. There are north end and south end security checkpoints. There are check-in, the arrival levels that are a level above all the security checkpoints, except for, I think there's one that's out near the frontier counters. That is a checkpoint that leads to a bridge and so on and so forth. But in general, the departure desks for the airlines are a level above security. If you want to get your boarding pass in advance, either download it, print it, put it on your smartphone. If you're like me, you actually put them on your smartwatch so you don't even pull your phone out when you're going through security. If you do all that and you're not, and you can use either curbside for your checked luggage, or if you don't even have checked luggage, you can go straight to security. One of the things I tell people is if you're going to be traveling a lot, definitely go and get yourself a known traveler number. It makes going through security a lot faster. It's the security pre-check lines. It is the best $100 you will ever spend on yourself if you're going to travel even more than once in a year, because you spend your $100 and it's good for 5 years. And that means you're going through pre-check lines. You're not taking off your shoes and your belt and half your jewelry and whatever, just to not trigger all the metal detectors and so on. Those things are all things that you can do in advance if you're traveling. If you're only going once, go through, don't worry about it, just take your time. But one thing I have found is that people in airports are extremely helpful, even if they're only going to give you a moment's worth of an answer to a question. For me, sometimes I'll walk in and I'll just say, which way is it to the north end security? Because I like to use north end security because it has more pre-check lines. And it doesn't matter which security you use at Denver. Both of them are still going to feed down to the train. They're both going to get you where you need to go. But you do need to be able to ask, if you're walking the airport by yourself, which way is security? How do I get there? And if somebody's willing to walk with you, great. If they're willing to just point you in the right direction, be prepared. You're going to ask the question again. Another tool, which if you have a smartphone and you want to use it, IRA, which is a visual interpreting service, is free out at Denver International Airport. So if you want to go into the airport and pull up an IRA session and have an IRA agent help you get through the airport, that also is a very, very viable tool. All of them work together. If IRA fails you, that doesn't mean don't ask directions and get your way through the airport. No matter which way you do it, the main deal is go out there. And you can schedule ambassadors. There's a whole bunch of different ways for getting it. So don't let the airport be the reason you don't go on a trip.
That's all really, really good advice, especially for folks who may have not dealt with air travel or DIA before. So we have several questions from our listeners, and I know you've covered probably some of these things, but maybe we can go a little bit more in depth. So Jeff writes, what's the first thing I do when navigating a new airport, going through security and potentially having my cane taken and responding to either too much help or not enough help?
The first thing you do, frankly, when going to a brand new airport is take a deep breath, realize that you are here and so is everyone else. And most everyone else is just as lost as you are in that airport. They might have some more ways of looking for signs and so on. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with borrowing somebody's eyes and saying, hey, could you tell me which way, if you're coming into an airport from your plane, you can always ask, hey, which way is it to baggage claim? Or chat somebody up and ask, do you mind if I walk with you? You don't necessarily need to use them for sighted guide, but you can if you're both comfortable with the option. But you can always walk along with them if they're going to the same place you are or close to the same place. Walk with them, chat them up, and get some information in that way, because everybody from your flight is going primarily in the same direction. Somebody might deviate off and say, hey, I'm stopping at the bathrooms, or I'm going to grab some food or whatever, but everybody's either going to baggage claim or ground transportation. So walk with them and make new friends while you're walking the airport. That's an easy way to handle that part of it. If you're walking into a brand new airport through the door, keep in mind that several things are always the same. You're always going to, if you have your boarding passes and such, you're going to head for security. If you don't have your boarding passes, one of the things I will always do is stop. If there's a curbside check-in and you need to get your boarding pass, ask them if they'll do it for you at curbside check-in. If you don't want to go through the actual counter lines. Generally, they're pretty nice about printing up a boarding pass if you're blind, and pointing you in the direction of security. When you are going to security, if they say they're going to take your cane away to scan it, that's absolutely fine. It's required, frankly, that they scan your cane, whether you use it to walk through the detector or not. They do need to scan canes. You'd be amazed at the things that can fit in a cane. That is a whole different conversation, which could be a whole lot of fun with a couple of drinks. But if they're going to take your cane, for one thing, if you choose to put your cane up on the luggage belt along with all of the rest of your things, for the most part, you're just going to walk alongside your luggage until it gets to the place where they're going to push it through. And if so, somebody will either give you a cane of theirs to use to walk through the detector, or you can say, hey, scan my cane and then give it back to me and I'll use my own to walk through. Or you can opt to just say, give me a hand and help me, point me in the right direction of the metal detector. It'll either typically be right in front of you, or it's going to be off a little ways to your left or right, but it's not that hard to find it. So you can ask several different ways. And if you do use your cane and your own cane is something that will set off the metal detector, you can ask for a pat down. If you say, hey, I want to use my cane, understand that, yes, they do have to scan it, but you can ask to use your own, or you can use either of those couple of ways to get through and then meet your cane on the other end of the line. No matter what, if you're walking through security, there are always going to be attendants at security that are willing to take the moments to guide you through. So you don't have to feel like you're completely lost if your cane disappears from you for a couple of minutes. Or you can say, scan it and give it back to me so I can use it. All of those options are good.
And Maryann, you've talked a lot about being sure to ask for help. If you're not getting enough help, just ask. But what about when you get too much help?
Yes, too much help is a thing at the airport, for sure. Sometimes you'll ask, hey, can I get a guide to the gate? And the next thing you know, somebody's running up with some wheelchair ready to shove it right underneath your bum. And this has happened to me several times. There are definitely some great ways to handle it. One is to say, no, thank you. I plan on walking, and I'm happy to have your company. Another is, if you've got luggage, plant your luggage in the wheelchair and say, thank you for carrying my luggage. Now let's go. It's a way that's been done by me and many others. Sometimes you can just say, thank you, but I've got it. And or you can explain to somebody, yes, I need help, and here is what I do need. or you can say, no, thanks. And if you do it with a smile on your face and you walk away like you know where you're going, they're going to look like idiots if they continue to follow you and bother you. And people will notice and they will help run interference for you. But do not be afraid to say, that's okay. I've got it. Thank you. But or make sure you're advocating for the help that you want. If somebody's ready to shove a wheelchair under your bum and you are like me and you really want to walk and stretch yourself out before you have to sit for several hours, by all means say, no, thank you. I don't need that wheelchair. That wheelchair isn't for me. It's for somebody else. Primarily, it typically is. Or if somebody still has the wheelchair, but they're like, no, I'm supposed to meet you. Then I'm like, okay, well, if you want to, you can park it somewhere and we can still walk. Because I need the walk. I need a stretch today. And my dog absolutely loves to walk the airport. Those are all things I will say if that's the kind of help that's being offered.
All right. So our next question comes from Beth. She says, I'm really loving this travel month. My husband and I are going to Florida, and I'm flying for the first time since losing my vision. When you're booking air travel, where is the best place to try and sit on the plane? And do I want to try and board first or last? And same with getting off the plane.
Frankly, I've always believed that the best place to be on a plane is somewhere near the front. And that has nothing to do with blindness. It has to do with not being stuck at the back of the line.
Yeah, that's true.
Keeping in mind that if you are sitting somewhere near the front, depending on how they load the planes, you may or may be some of the last people that get on the plane. But I am also of the opinion that if you are going and you think you do need extra time to get down the jetway because you are blind and you are navigating this for the first time, by all means pre-board. Ask for the right to do it. You don't have to arrange that in advance, but you can when you're booking your flight, or you can go up to the gate agent and say, hey, may I be part of the pre-boarding? A lot of times they'll see if you've got a cane with you, or a guide dog, or anything that remotely looks like you are blind, if they see that, they're going to ask you, would you like to pre-board? Sometimes they will insist that you pre-board, and then that becomes part of that. Maybe it's help you don't want. Maybe you actually do want to board along with the passengers who are getting in at the same time you are. And you have every right to say, no, thanks, I don't want to pre-board. But if you will take extra time to get down, by all means, pre-board. If you frankly are just like, hey, I know I'm going to need help finding my seat, and I feel like that might take an extra couple minutes, and it would just be way more comfortable for me to pre-board, please pre-board. Don't be the last one on the plane. I am never the last one on the plane. I either pre-board if I think it's necessary, or I'll board with my own boarding group. But I am never going to say, oh, I'll wait and go on last. That's definitely the least desirable thing to do.
That's right. There's no overhead baggage space
there's
at that point.
There's no space for your stuff. And with me, that means there's no space for my dog's harness either, because I take his harness off when he flies so that he's comfortable. Being somebody who's blind does not mean you automatically need the bulkhead seats either. And for me and my guide dog, I prefer not to put him there. I like for him to be the luggage, the under the seat luggage. He curls up into a great little ball and he fits under the seat in front of me. And it's a perfect fit for both of us. So I actually don't like to do bulkhead seats, but I will gladly do something that's closer to the front, just so that you don't have to navigate the whole length of the plane to figure out where you're going. And as far as getting off the plane, I don't like to be last doing that either. As I said before, if you're unsure of where you're going, but you know you're going to be going to baggage claim or to ground transportation, but frankly, it's all generally in the same area. Get up when everybody else does. You don't have to be the first one off the plane, but get up when everybody else does and ask people around you. Or if you want to arrange that assistance at the gate to get you to your next destination, by all means, you can do that. But you can just as easily walk with other people, talk with them, and say, hey, do you mind if I walk with you to baggage claim? They're going to be looking for the same things you are. And it's okay to navigate an airport that way. And it's not scary. You might make a new friend. Or you might make a friend for only 5 or 10 or 20 minutes, however long it takes to get to baggage claim. But that's also great.
So, Maryann, you touched a little bit about traveling with your guide dog and having him curled up by you. I know sometimes folks have had trouble, not just Ubers and things, but with airline travel and their guide dogs. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that can be frustrating, but also kind of scary when you're relying on that dog. And if for some reason they don't want to allow the dog.
Yes, I absolutely can. I am a member of the Colorado Association of Guide Dog Users, and which is part of the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado. And we are absolutely working on it as a national organization. I know the American Council of the Blind is also doing so, but the airlines are now all requiring that we fill out forms for guide dog travel. One of the things that we are doing is a petition to get the Federal Aviation Commission and so on to make it not a requirement for blind people who are traveling with guide dogs to have to fill out these forms, because the forms are not consistent. If you want to join us in that effort, you can go to the National Association of Guide Dog Users page and look for the petition and click and sign it, make comments. By all means, that would be helpful, because the forms are an inconvenience to blind people in a huge way, because they're not consistent and frankly, they're not extremely accessible unless you have exactly the right circumstances. And even then, they're not great. But when I am flying, I do make sure I have this form filled out, put in my purse. If the airlines lets me, I will upload the forms to them. But even if I do, I will still bring a copy of this form with me, because they will ask you for it. Sometimes they'll ask you for it, sometimes they won't. But if they ask you for it, it's the time that you don't have one. So I always travel with the documentation for airline forms for guide dogs. Frankly, they're for all service animals, and
Yes.
it's mainly to cut down on them, trying to bring things like peacocks and whatever on planes. I actually do know that story is legit, because I know a lady who was on the plane with the peacock. But
Wow. Okay.
yeah, it was weird. But it is very scary to possibly miss your flight, because people at the airlines are not all fully trained on this is the form, this is what's expected. And sometimes even if people have the form, it's like, oh no, that's not the right one for us, and so on. So this is why we're looking to get it to not happen. And sometimes the airlines, they'll say, oh no, it's the wrong form. And we'll say, okay, well then help us fill out the new one. Oh no, we can't do that. Well, if you need the form, then you need to help me fill it out, because you're asking me to fill out a piece of print paper, which I can't do. But I have had friends who have almost missed flights to important things because somebody at the gate has decided they're not going to fly with their guide dog. And if you're not going to fly with your guide dog and your guide dog is there in your hand, it's a problem. It has definitely been a problem. We are doing the utmost to try to eliminate the forms, to eliminate the problems, so that people who are obviously traveling with a guide dog, and frankly, a guide dog is a guide dog. There's no question what its job is. There's no question what a guide dog tends to look like. It typically wears a harness. It typically is doing a job. And frankly, it's also extremely well behaved. Most of these things that are other people's pet service things, I don't even call them service animals, because frankly, there are many that I have seen that are absolutely people trying to sneak their pets on board. Those animals are not well behaved. They are not properly attired as a service animal, and they're not going to do the kind of work a guide dog does. Granted, there are definitely other service animals and service dogs, and they should be let on planes as long as they're doing all the right things. But it definitely can be scary. I was traveling a couple of years ago during COVID, and I had a lady who said to me, "Oh, you're using the wrong form." And I said, "No, I'm using the form that was for your airline." And she's like, "Well, you need to have one that's current." And I said, "But the form has a date for an entire year. Why is this a problem?" And she said, "Oh, you should have a form for this flight. You should fill out a separate one every time you fly." And I said, "Do you understand how hard it is to do these forms?" And eventually she gave up and walked away. And on the flight coming home, they didn't even ask me for the form, but I had it in my purse anyway. And it was a legit form for that flight. As long as you have the correct paperwork, you may have to fight a little bit about it. And absolutely ask for supervisors, ask for, anybody higher up. If you're going through this process and they're giving you grief about your dog, escalate it as far as you need to, as long as they're holding your flight. Because that's don't miss something amazing because somebody at the airlines is ridiculous.
Okay. Well, thank you for all of those tips, Maryann, and really important information, especially with the guide dogs, because I know people both with guide dogs and other legitimate service dogs that have had issues. So that's definitely something for folks to be aware of when they're traveling and just to be prepared. So thank you for all the questions folks have sent in. If you have more, I know we're going to be visiting with Maryann again in a couple weeks, but if you have more questions for her, be sure to let us know, or for our other guests. The feedback information again, our feedback line is feedback@aftersight.org, or the phone number is 720-712-8856. Maryann, we've covered a lot of different things today. What's one thing you'd like to leave the listeners with as we wrap today's episode up?
I would say the most important thing is make time for yourself to do the traveling you want to do. Do not let the airport or the processes of travel scare you into missing something important in your life, or frankly, even just fun in your life. All of the things like the airport, the being on the plane, the how you get to where you're going, all of those things will take care of themselves. And if you have the right tools and you're determined to travel, by all means do so. The only bad choice is the one that says stay home because I'm scared, because I can't see. That's not a good choice, and it's not the one that will make you happy in the end. So ask what you need to and go where you want to.
Great. Well, thank you, Maryann. And that's actually a great segue for in a couple weeks when you are back, and we'll be talking about why it's so important to travel and see the world, which I know will be fascinating and entertaining again. But before that, next week, we're going to be talking to Ted Takuichi, who does a lot of land travel and sightseeing, and that's going to be very fun as well. So tune in next week for that. And in a couple weeks, we'll be back with Maryann. Thanks, Maryann, for joining me today.